And the first session is going to be from a name you recognize, David Millington. David he doesn't work for Embarcadero anymore, but that's not going to stop him being involved in the Delphi community. He, by the way, it was amicable. He didn't get fired or anything. He decided to go off and he's doing his own thing now. Which is great, and that own thing involves working in partnership with RemObjects, but also working on a particular project of his own in partnership with RemObjects, which we're going to hear about now. So from David Millington, here is CodeBot. Speak to you soon, and he'll be live soon.
Hi everyone, and welcome to a preview of a new technology that RemObjects is planning to introduce for Delphi, an AI coding assistant named CodeBot. My name's David Millington. Some of you may know me. I used to work at Embarcadero until quite recently. What you may not know is that I've used AI heavily since it started becoming a really important part of programming a couple of years ago. Now, I've always enjoyed coding and do it for fun, and I have since I was a teenager. These days, I really enjoy coding with the assistance of an AI as my colleague in what we create. And in my view, Delphi programmers, like all of us, would really benefit from having one available. That's what this talk is about, a new coding assistant that is planned for Delphi. I tend to believe very strongly in modernization. Now, not everything the world brings as time goes past is good, but I genuinely believe a lot of it is. For all the things that happen, we make progress and improvements, sometimes huge jumps forward as a human species, and AI is one of those. And I've spent a large portion of my career working to bring modernity and productivity to Delphi and C++ Builder, including well before I joined Embarcadero. You can see one recent example on screen for Delphi's sister product, but I care about Delphi too. And in this, I know there are many community members who also desire modernity and modern tooling, and there are quite a few people I admire for their work and efforts. There are a lot of people who contribute modern and exciting things to the Delphi ecosystem. Among many wonderful developers and companies, one that is very interesting to any Delphi developer is RemObjects, who makes some absolutely amazing technology. And that brings us back to AI. I am really glad to be working with RemObjects on bringing modern capable AI tooling to the Delphi IDE. RemObjects have been around for over 20 years and make some great products for Delphi and other languages. If as a Delphi programmer you need to interoperate with .NET, the easiest way to do so is via Hydra. If you need a highly performant and secure data layer, Data Abstract is the way to go. If you need network services, whether servers or clients, the Remoting SDK is brilliant. And the most amazing of them all is Oxygene, which is a modern object Pascal. I'd love to give a talk on modern Pascal and how beautifully designed and productive it is, but that would be off topic for a talk about AI. But I do recommend you check out what it offers, and maybe we'll hear more in future. So check out what this company offers. Given their background, modern approach, and focus on productive libraries and tooling, it's no coincidence that RemObjects are focusing on creating an AI coding assistant. So what are we going to go over today? First, I want to share what coding with AIs is like. I mentioned I do use AI a lot, and why? Now, I assure you I'm a perfectly competent programmer on my own. You'll have to take my word for that. But why do I use, and not only use, but love using AI assistants? To answer that, I want to share how I think programming has invisibly changed. There's been a fundamental shift in how we program. I also want to look at Smart Code Insight, which is an AI feature inbuilt in Delphi today. While it's great to have, and I'm glad it's there, I know that if you've only used Smart Code Insight, you might ask yourself why, as a community of Delphi developers, we need something else. And I aim to show that. Why are we building the new AI? That harks back to the fundamental shift in programming. Then I want to look at another AI tool that already exists for Pascal, CodeBot. And I'll demo that live running on a Mac. Now, it also works on Windows, but hey, modern world, other operating systems exist too, so let's use them. And finally, we'll get onto CodeBot for Delphi, the new product we're previewing. It is under heavy development right now, but we're keen to demo it to you. Delphi includes an AI assistant, Smart Code Insight, and while I love Delphi and AI, I don't personally use Smart Code Insight because it doesn't do what I personally look for. Of course, it's personal opinion, and I want to emphasize that I'm glad Delphi has it. But to share by contrast what I do want and find useful, I want my AI to see my code so we can work in it together. That's all relevant code and even the entire project if necessary. Now that may surprise you, and I've heard people worried about this, but here's why. Essentially, it's because an AI is like a human, and you wouldn't expect a junior dev to achieve anything if you didn't let them access the code, and same for an AI. It doesn't work. Humans need to see the code, and your other intelligent companion also needs to see the code for the same reason. But more what I most look for is agentic coding. This is where things really change. Now, an AI is smart, really smart, and can think and plan. You see, if you use OpenAI, you might just think of AI as chat, but it's not. AI thinks, and AI can, very genuinely, analyze code, form a plan to implement a feature or solve a bug, and execute it. And this is where things change. As a programmer, when you work with an AI, you often give intelligent, informed information, and then you let it work, just like it was a human. And this is a radically different way of thinking. Now, in some ways, it's not different at all. We're all used to that if we assign tasks or give input to a junior dev in our team. But to do that with a computer, for a computer to really be capable of that, is something very new. So these two are key. Context, lots of context, and acting semi-independently, being an agent. The best way to think of an AI is as a really enthusiastic junior developer. Think of them as that bouncy, enthusiastic colleague fresh out of university who's read a lot of code and will be super excited to do even the most boring work. But you need to guide them. You're the one who keeps an eye and ensures they follow the right path. That brings us back to context, which is reading code. And I genuinely recommend you think of an AI as just like a human when understanding this. The key here is not just the code on screen, like the current method or whatever you can copy-paste. There's a fancy term called transitive understanding, which just means following from one thing to another. If you're solving a bug, you may have the location on screen where it becomes obvious. But often, the actual bug is elsewhere, so you follow the chain of behavior. This method, which is part of this class, which set up this state, which uses this other class in this other file, and this is following code's behavior across multiple locations. So you've got to give your AI access to your code so it can follow the behavior of the system as a whole. Now, I've said a few times, think of an AI like a really enthusiastic junior developer, like a human. Now, one of the best things about working with people is talking to them. What call a talk? I have a problem that I can't figure out. Can I talk to you for a few minutes? Well, you can do that with an AI, and not only are you not taking time from another dev, but if you work remotely, you may not even have a nearby dev. Your AI is there, and they are really good at listening to you and digging into what you say. And agents. I mentioned a few minutes ago letting the AI plan and act. Look, as a developer, you focus on the hard problems. Thinking is the most important part of being a programmer. I find that what I find fun about programming is creativity, the sculpting of something. When you work with an AI, you do that. You think a lot, but instead of directly doing the typing, something else does. And that's how to use an AI agent. You still think about architecture and guidance, but you let something else do the rote work. I want to emphasize you stay highly involved, and in my opinion, you retain the fun parts. When I use an AI, I get more done, and I focus on the bits I personally find fun to do. I have always enjoyed programming, but with an AI, I enjoy programming even more. So, context. Being able to read code like a human and track code behavior from one part to another. In other words, both reading and understanding. And agentic. It plans and acts. You are the designer, not the typist. This truly is a paradigm shift, and I don't think you will have experienced this working with AI tools inside Delphi, so I want to show you what it's like outside Delphi. Okay, this is a screenshot of me using Claude Code, and this is what AI coding is really like. Now, this is from a personal project. I have grayed out a couple of things. Claude's interface is text. You hold a conversation with it, and at the top, it's suggesting to me that it does something. I say yes, but give it considerations, things that are important to me about the design. Remember, as an AI user, I think and design. But an AI is smart and can suggest really good things, so ask it. Here's where it gets exciting. Because it is intelligent, it plans. Here I am on the 5th step of 6 in implementing something. That's a list and a plan to implement what I asked it that it came up with. And then it does it. It writes and changes code. You can see a diff on screen. Now, of course, I can look at that and review the code. Major things, like tell it it's wrong and to do it a different way, or minor things. One I did today was just telling an AI to name methods differently. So we have informed conversation, intelligent back and forth, like with a person, multi-step planning, and then multi-step execution, with you as the designer, not the typist. And it's a genuine paradigm shift. People hype using terms like that, but there's a reason here. It really changes coding for the better. To me, it's the design, the creativity, the thinking, the construction that makes a programmer. And AI lets you do more of it. And I think I'm a decent programmer. I've written kernel drivers even. So when I say that I find that it lets me achieve things more easily that I used to find hard, that's a really meaningful statement. I do find some things hard. To be honest, I find many things hard sometimes, and AI does make them much easier for me to do. And I love doing things. Doing things is amazing. Now, I have just enthused about AI coding, so I need to talk about vibe coding. It's trendy. Vibe coding is where you abdicate responsibility. You don't look into problems anymore, you just let the AI do what it wants until you get a result. Now, I said more thinking, less typing, and vibe coding is where you do no thinking. I do not recommend this. Basically, it gets the same results as doing it with a junior developer, and we've all seen what happens when someone junior goes off without guidance and builds an entire system. Sometimes it's not great. So treat your AI as a colleague. Talk to it, advise it, work with it, rather than letting it do everything. Okay, that's what's changed in programming. That's what coding with AI is like, and I hope that screenshot with Claude Code really impressed you. To me, the most amazing thing is transitive understanding of code and planning sensibly what and how to do something, and AIs can do that. It really changes how you work. Let's have a quick look at Smart Code Insight. Now, for all the Delphi AIs I'm going to test today, I will do multiple things. First, ask it about interfaces to see if it understands it lives inside Delphi. I think it's a fairly easy question to answer. Ask it about delegation, which is to see if it replies with info on the implements keyword. The reason is to build on the previous reply, see if it understands we are talking Delphi interfaces, and therefore that delegation means interface delegation. And finally, ask it to complete some code. I have a simple space where I need a Fibonacci function. I'll do this for comparison in all Delphi AIs. Like Claude Code, or like GitHub Copilot, Smart Code Insight works through a chat interface. You can ask questions, so let's ask it about interfaces. Interfaces are a common and fundamental thing in Delphi. And it's come back not even answering about Delphi. This is not really a useful answer. Okay, let's try delegation. Now, this is a true answer, but it's not computer science delegation, and it's certainly not the Delphi implements keyword. Okay, let's try to get it to complete some code. I have some code on screen that needs a Fibonacci method, but there isn't one. You can invoke this via the context menu, which is quite tall, and I am screen recording on a small window, but let's see what it does. Okay, it can only complete selected code. Well, that's fair. Let's give it the method prototype for a Fibonacci function. And invoke it again. And that's great. It has given us a Fibonacci method. Let me delete all the comments around it to get that method. Okay, and it has a second implementation below. Cool, that could be quite useful actually, but still, let's just delete. And format. Okay, it completed a method. However, I don't use this, because to me this system is not useful in practice. I don't want to have to do that just to invoke code completion. And finally, agent-style coding. As far as I know, it just doesn't have it. You can't tell it implement something for me and have it do it. There's nothing there. So that's why I don't personally use Smart Code Insight. Compare it to the screenshot of Claude code I showed earlier. All the things that I personally find beneficial about AI, the things I actually use and rely on for AI-assisted coding. Context, transitive understanding, agent behavior, things that allow me to work with it like a colleague to get things done. None of those are present. And that's why we think we can build something better. There's a lot of space here for an AI tool that behaves more like other tools. And just as a reminder, if you've used it, and I'm showing it only because it's in Delphi, same for even older versions of GitHub Copilot, which today feel terribly outdated, you might not get the excitement around AI coding. But there are amazing reasons to be excited. It is like an entire junior colleague in your IDE, and we genuinely live in the future. So we want to give you a valuable, context-aware, agentic coding assistant in Delphi, and we're calling it CodeBot. All right, let's look at what AI RemObjects already has, and then go on to see what we're developing. It's early days, but we can already show you more than exists in Delphi today. I mentioned earlier that RemObjects makes a modern Pascal compiler, and it also has its own IDEs, including one that runs natively on Mac. These are called Fire and Water. Fire runs on Mac, and Water runs on Windows. They have the same functionality, so what I'm about to show you works just fine on Water on Windows too. But it's the modern world, and people use Macs, and I use a Mac, so I'll show you a Pascal program on Mac, with an AI solving an issue there. This is the first CodeBot, and it already exists. Now, it's great. It has context. It can read your code and answer questions about it. It can follow to other files. But it does not yet act as an agent. It doesn't create a plan and do things for you. So in terms of expectations, what I will show you is better than Smart Code Insight, but not yet up to where Claude Code is. So let's have a look at Fire on a Mac. Remember, you can do this in Windows too. Here I have one of the Oxygene, in other words Pascal, sample apps. This one is a simple Mac app that displays a metal shader. I'll show it running in a moment, but right now it won't compile, which we're going to fix with AI. So you can see Pascal syntax here, but note it's using the Apple AppKit framework directly. Now let's open a file that happens to have an error. First, CodeBot can be shown through View CodeBot and lives in this panel on the right-hand side of the IDE. This file has an error, and that error lies somewhere in this shader. So here I think is a good but simple example of an AI solving an issue. This is a shader language, not something I know well, so definitely somewhere in AI can help me. But remember, they can help with things you do know well too, often even more so because you build on each other. And I'll give it a vague description because, hey, I might sometimes be tired and might not communicate well, and I just want to get something done, and an AI never gets tired and will help you when you are. So let's see, the method, and I'll copy the name here, doesn't compile. What's wrong? That'll do. No need to give it the error message yet unless it turns out to need it, because remember, it's smart, it can figure it out. And look, it gets the file contents automatically. This means it is partway to being agentic, and it correctly identifies the issue. I have a constant, and yet I'm trying to modify it. Of course it won't work. But I can tell you, I didn't spot this when I first got this problem. This is not actually a fake example. This is a real example that I genuinely encountered and then decided to use to show you. Like any good AI, CodeBot can hold a conversation and has a memory. Let's thank it. I like being polite to AIs. And for interest, let's now build and run the app. Here you can see a simple metal shader as a native Cocoa macOS app. And remember, this is all built in Pascal with the Oxygene modern Pascal language. Okay, so that's the existing CodeBot in Fire on Mac and a Pascal app with a metal shader. And remember, it works in Water on Windows as well. In development, though, is CodeBot for Delphi, and it has big goals. Those are to have context, to be able to traverse code and understand it. We are working on a Delphi-specific context engine here that is intended to superpower an AI rather than have generic file reading. Plus, we want it to be agentic. It should analyze, plan, and act. In other words, bring to Delphi the true, modern, groundbreaking AI coding. But this is all in development. It is not agentic yet, and the context engine is still being developed, so what I will show you is less than what's on screen. And because of that, I want to emphasize that this is a preview and it's not done. These are goals, not promises. Let's have a look at what we have working. This is CodeBot in Delphi. Just like CodeBot in Fire or Water, or GitHub Copilot, or for that matter, like Smart Code Insight, it has a chat window. Let's give it the same test. Remember, interfaces, delegation, and code completion, and see if it knows what Delphi is to start by asking it about interfaces. And yes, it does. In fact, it gave a pretty good answer. It certainly knows it's living inside Delphi, and it knows how Delphi interfaces work. Again, let's think it, and why not ask it to tell us more now about delegation. Now I'm referring to delegating interfaces, but interpreting that requires the conversation memory. A memory is great, because like a person, it will remember and follow you as you thread through multiple topics in your daily work. Most importantly, if it really knows what it's talking about when I ask it about delegation, and remember in the prompt I'm no longer using the word interface as a test, it will note the implements keyword, which I think isn't super well known, I think even among many Delphi developers, so this is a bit of a test. How well it knows the more interesting bits of the Delphi language and how well it can infer. And look, it has replied about interfaces, showing it has memory, and yes, it talks about the implements keyword. In other words, it's a full chat, and when it comes to Delphi, it knows what it's talking about. But let's try something else. One area that we think AI can help is code completion. Something like LSP is great, but ultimately it suggests just single symbols, single words. These days, we can suggest entire implementations. Here I have the same incomplete code as before. If you remember, I'm trying to get the Fibonacci sequence, which I think is a good basic test, but I haven't got the method. Now, we might normally think of code completing as single symbols, so I'd have to manually write the method and use completion as I go, but AI is smarter. Let me invoke CodeBot code completion just in this blank space and see what it does. And you can see it is completing code, but it's not giving a single method call. It's not even giving the method prototype. It's giving us the entire method. AI is smart. It can infer what you're trying to do, and it understood from context that I needed a Fibonacci method. It figured that out for me, so it wrote one for me. This is a wonderful example of how AI improves coding. Now, I could look up on Wikipedia how the Fibonacci sequence works and write something, but as a coder, what I really want is the method to be there so I can move on to the interesting part, which is using it. AI does that work for me. Let me press Tab to accept, and it inserts the AI code completed method. Folks, this is miles ahead. We're not completing individual names, but code completing entire blocks of code. Think about this scaled up. We think with agent mode, so it can think and plan, we can have AI help you do major large work. It works for other languages. Let's bring it to Delphi. So that's a tiny preview. You saw it work in the Delphi IDE, but there's a lot of infrastructure you haven't seen to get it working. It is smart. It knows it's in Delphi. It can provide good answers, can hold a conversation. Maybe you can use it to onboard new devs. If your business is struggling to find Delphi developers, they can ask it for guidance. It can also complete code, and we think old code completion is just not relevant anymore. Contextual, smart, AI-powered code completion is where it's at. CodeBot provides it. But it's not finished. We need to give it more context, and we are working on the agentic coding. Both those are in development. So that's it, folks. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned a bunch about what modern AI-powered coding looks like and enjoyed seeing both what's already available and a preview or teaser of what we hope to bring to you and Delphi. And for further info, you can find out more at remobjects.com/codebot. As a reminder, check out Oxygene, the modern object Pascal in both Mac and Windows. And look at other RemObjects tech too. It's really impressive stuff. Hydra alone, which helps you interop between Delphi and .NET, is amazing. Data Abstract for high performance and secure data. Remoting SDK for network services and clients. Our goal for CodeBot for Delphi is to give you an entire junior developer sidekick in your IDE. One that knows Delphi, that you can talk to, and that can do tasks for you. The idea is not just productivity, but letting you focus on the fun parts of your job. Remember the paradigm shift. We've very quietly moved to a new world as developers, and using AI is a night and day difference, and it is amazing. Here at RemObjects, we plan to bring it to you.
Didn't I tell you today would be amazing? Didn't I tell you? I told you that we have, I would say we saved the best for last because we've had so many good sessions. It would be unfair to say that. But I would definitely say that we have saved some really good stuff for last. And what's even better is in the studio with me is David Millington. Why are you not showing up? Hang on just one second. Oh, I see. I've done this. There you go. Now we have you on the screen. Hello, David.
Hi, Ian. How's it going?
It's going good. And I tell you what, lots of very positive feedback. Lots and lots of people saying some nice things. And good news, we have some questions as well. Because as we know,
that's fantastic.
It's always a moment where you do a webinar and you get no questions like, did we show them something horrible, or do they just not get it, or are they bored or something? But actually, no, you got some good questions. So what I'm going to do, well, let's start with the questions that we had. By the way, I don't know what is going on with Paul Jackson, but he said, Ian, you're a good man. I didn't do anything. I don't know quite what it was, but he did realise.
You are a good man, Ian.
So. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, but he said, "Yeah, Big Dave." So apparently now you are Big Dave.
Oh, that's
I've met you.
pretty
And
awesome, actually. Thank you.
Yeah, we've stood next to each other, and I am actually bigger than you, so physically bigger. But then I'm bigger than a lot of people. So there you go. So first of all, let's get through a few complimentary comments. So Milan said, "This is conceptually so far ahead of the curve; it's mind blowing." So I think that's kind of the gist of what people have said is that they're like, "Whoa, this is different," and yeah, it is different. I mean, I know you're not a massive fan of smart codings like for yourself, which I totally get. The reason it's off by default is people can choose. And we've always said this at Embarcadero, when you're writing code, we know we're conceptually sitting there with you. And what you don't want to do is give away your secret blend of herbs and spices off to an AI somewhere, if that's not your thing. If you're concerned about AI, and some people are, then we don't want to turn it on by default and force you down that route. But at the same time, you get to choose it. But this goes beyond what Code Insight can do. Code Insight is good for people that like it, and this is not Code Insight Mark II. This is a different level, as you made clear. Troy, who has got the weird username of Eric Cartman from Iowa. I don't think he's actually Eric Cartman. He says, in the chat window, instead of typing, can you use voice to text, or is that something that might be done later?
Yeah, it's interesting, this very first question, because it's actually something we've been thinking about. Right now, as you saw, like it's just a text, it's a VCLT memo that you type into, press enter, and the message goes across. But AI, of course, can do far more than just chat. We just saw how it can think and plan, and there are AI models for exactly this to assist with exactly this kind of use case. So it would make complete sense to integrate AI further than that, and to be able to use the microphone to ask, and then it would understand what you were saying and ask that question instead. I would expect that's like a version 2 or maybe 1.1 kind of feature.
Yeah.
But it's an excellent idea, because I think it really mixes with the idea of changing coding to the focus on thinking and creativity, not typing. Matches perfectly.
Well, I'll give you some insight that I've had from this week, actually. Obviously, this week has been a bit of a training course for me on what's available in AI, because we've had so many sessions. I don't know everything, and I made it very clear to people. Look, I don't describe myself as an expert in AI. I know quite a lot about it because I've had to research it, but and use it and stuff like that. But we've had people like Yilmaz on, who personally as well. He's very smart C++ coder, but also an AI expert. But nearly every time we've shown some system with AI, the first thing people say is, can we talk to it? So just FYI, it seems to be a very common question that people ask from AI systems, which is, let me talk to it. And from my personal point of view, I find that weird, because even though I work on my own, the only other colleague is sitting there. Where is he? Yeah, he's still there, down there asleep. That's my office colleague, the little fat doggy. I still find it weird to talk out loud to the AI. But if you're in a shared office, where many coders do work in open plan offices or something like that, I can't really see 5 or 6 people sitting there talking to the AI, telling it what to do. So I think that typing makes sense, because that's how we really interact with the computer as developers anyway. But I get it. But it seems to be a recurring thing. I also thought I've made a couple of notes, which is a good sign. One thing you said, which I thought was hilarious, you said vibe coding is no thinking. I think that's what you said. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that was funny, because I don't know, vibe coding's, it's like this 10x programmer thing. I'm a 10x developer. It just seems, I get it. Like you picked a term very carefully there, where you said it's kind of like keep letting the AI go until something useful comes out of it. That seems.
It can work. People vibe code and create apps, and I think that's really powerful. But it's not necessarily good quality code underneath.
Yeah.
And as I said, AIs need guidance. I think the reason I put that in there is because I'm really enthusiastic about AI-assisted coding, but I do firmly believe in the role of thinking and architecting and designing and creating. And I view AI as a colleague, not as a
That's exactly my point. Yeah,
thing to just do everything for you.
that's exactly how I feel. I think that you should treat it as a very talented but junior developer. And actually, the session later on with Valerie Kim, their product is about checking that code automatically. So using AI to help you check. But even she would be the first to say, but don't 100% rely on it, because AI is AI. And as Yilmaz's session made it clear, it's not an exact science. It's a good science, and there's math involved and there's things like that. But at the end of the day, AI can get things wrong. Even really good AI, like your example, can still get things wrong because it's just the way these things work. So I don't know if you
I
can
think
answer this question. Sorry, carry on. Yeah.
So if I may comment on that, I mean, I mentioned using AI as a junior developer, but I really think that thinking of it as human is a good thing to recommend. I know that seems an odd recommendation, but we are used to computers being very correct, right or wrong. But I think that intelligence is about, conceptually about, integration of concepts and assessment and understanding and that kind of thing, and that is fuzzy. And that's why AI can have different results. I don't think it's helpful to think of it as a computer. I mean, it might run on a computer, but I don't think it's helpful to think of it in the computer framework. I think it's more helpful to think of it as, I phrased like a human, because that is the same kind of results. Humans can be incredibly talented and skilled, but I have written bugs in my code, and AI might as well.
Surely not.
Yeah, but the view is, I mean, they do really assist. Like I am so much more productive using one. Like it's incredible, and that's really what I want to bring to
I mean,
Delphi,
I had a
and everyone at RemObjects does.
Yeah, I mean, I had a customer email me just before the code camp, with a big long what's the word I'm looking for? Diatribe, I suppose, on AI, and saying how, what were our plans and all the rest of it. And some stuff I just can't answer the questions because, for business reasons, but also some of them, it's one of these things where, well, there are plans, but plans change, and in the AI market, it's a very fast moving environment, and new things are coming out all the time. But the weird thing was, nearly every question he had has been answered this week in the code camp. So, and you have just basically put the icing on the cake on the top of it, because he said, well, there should be a better AI CodeBot, and there you go. There's David has just shown exactly that. So let me ask this question. I don't know whether you've got an answer to this yet, but I'm going to put it up anyway. And this is from Chris Deegan, and he says, when is it out for Delphi, and how much per license? And you did emphasize that this is very much a work in progress at the moment. Have you got any concrete plans yet, or?
Yeah, I mean, it is obviously a work in progress. I mean, I was able to show you a preview, but it's not finished, and there are some complex and hard things to do, but things that we know are fully achievable. So we haven't fully settled on the price. So I can't really indicate that. Obviously, should be affordable and valuable and worthwhile, and there are other tools in the market that would presumably be comparable with. But I really can't answer more than that. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, my observation on that would be that RemObjects actually has a reasonably good price model. They're not like super expensive. They are affordable, but most business people would say that prices should be a little bit, it should make you wince a little bit, but it shouldn't make you cry. And I think that RemObjects heads in that direction. So,
we don't want to make anyone wince. I think RemObjects has tried to produce really valuable stuff, I think,
but stay in business as well. And that's the thing. You're not a hobby project here. I mean, that's something that's very important to point out, is that you've actually partnered with them to produce something that's meaningfully useful, and not just, I'll do it over my lunch break and see how it comes about. It's a much more managed situation than that.
Well, sorry, the other part of that question was, when is it out?
Yes, good point.
And again, that's not fully settled. When it'll be out when it's done, which I think is a good approach, because we want to, obviously get it out, but get it ready. Mostly currently thinking Q3, third quarter this year, but see what happens. I mean, it's not the kind of thing you want to promise in case you have more stuff you want to do. But we obviously want to get it out as soon as possible. I know this is a super vague answer.
No, I think it's a
Q3 is what
sensible
we have on the
answer.
website as
I don't think.
a rough indication.
I think if your plans are, when it comes to software development, it's very difficult to give a fixed schedule because there's always something at the last minute. But not only that, when you're talking about a subject like this, there are many unknowns. It's the Rumsfeld paradox that I was talking about the other day, which is there are things you know, things you know you don't know, and things you don't know you don't know. And with AI, there's a lot
Always
of
the interesting ones.
Yeah.
But those are always the interesting ones when you're developing, the things that come up that you didn't expect.
You didn't know you didn't know it. Yes, exactly. And with AI, there's a lot of the Rumsfeld paradox going on. I'm a big fan of that idea that, you need to remember that you can't always entirely scope the projects of knowns and unknowns because there's some things that you just don't know you don't know it. And he was talking about, like politics and stuff like that, but it applies to software development as well. Lots of times I've gone onto a subject and gone, I didn't know that, and I didn't know that until I needed to know it. Paul McGee, who's a regular participant in the webinars, and I'm sure you recognise his name as well. He says, "Yeah, of course, does more capability." And it's weird to be talking as an MVP, but he is an MVP, ladies and gentlemen. But does more capability
Fantastic.
like
Great guy.
this? Yeah, does more capability like this imply more tokens required back and forth? And actually, that might go to the next question as well.
Yeah. I mean, definitely, because when you talk to an AI, there's text going back and forth. You send messages to it, it sends messages back. If you have code, and some of the code goes to it, and more code goes back, and that kind of thing. One of the nice things about AI, I mean, it's moving so fast, is that AIs are both getting a lot better and a lot cheaper. So
well,
a lot of the AI coding,
it gets cheaper. It has to.
Oh yeah.
I've seen. I forget what plan. I think it was Claude. I was looking at one of them, and their top plan was like $250 a month or something like that. And then I saw another one the other day, and I forget. I can't even remember what it was, but all it was audio dictation, and it was like an automated note-taking thing, which is ridiculous because Whisper is out there, which is an open source project. But this thing was asking for $1,000 a month, and I'm thinking, well, okay, I can see how you can, you can say, yes, it's going to be useful to me. How much would I pay a person to follow me around and take notes? And the AI is probably cheaper than that and more effective. But $1,000 a month is a lot of money to pay out for a service. But yes,
well, I mean, something like GitHub Copilot is what, $19.99 a month or something, I think. And Claude is very interesting because it actually does charge based on the usage. And that includes how much it thinks. So it is a thinking model. And if it thinks hard, it will use a lot of token. You can give it really hard. I have given Claude really hard problems.
Right.
And it'll think a lot and use a lot of tokens, and then it'll cost more because Claude charges you as you use it, rather than a fixed fee.
Right.
But really, I think this just reflects the nature of what it is. We haven't settled on this kind of thing, as I mentioned earlier, with the pricing. I think we want to get it working and working well, and then decide how to make it available. The goal, of course, is just to make it accessible so everyone can use it. Yeah.
And then it'll bubble up into this is what we have to charge to make it viable. And actually, if we were to look back to the last most recent sea change, to use that horrible phrase in technology, was web hosting and provision of cloud services. And Amazon AWS is notorious for giving you absolutely every service you've got. I mean, I showed on day one, I could replicate Google Translate. Not entirely, but very close to it in Delphi with web stencils using AWS Translate in the background. Cost me nothing to do that. I think the demo cost me like 1 cent over the course of a week of playing with it. But everybody has got a horror story if they're in big business of having an AWS bill that came through and terrified them because they had a lot of noughts at the end. And it's the same with AI. Right now, we're in that era where, yes, if you're on a per usage model, then you have to think about where your expenditure is, and this is a business expenditure if you're using it to create the product. If you're a software developer and you're using it to create software which you then sell, and you're going to use AI to do it, how much would it cost you to have someone come and work with you as a junior and pay them a decent wage and not enough to buy a Big Mac once a day or something?
I mean, it should obviously be far, far less. I mean, as I said, Copilot is what, $20 a month or something, and obviously we haven't settled on pricing, and we might go for a usage model if we use something that is really advanced. But we'd always keep it under control and let you see what's happening and that kind of thing. There was an interesting thing about the question about implying using more tokens, because one of the things we're working on is many AIs will simply do things like read entire files, which can be huge amounts of text, and that uses a lot of tokens. But one of the things we're working on is a fairly advanced engine for understanding Delphi code specifically.
Right.
And I mentioned transitive understanding to be able to sort of follow between things. The idea with this, and I have to qualify this is in development, we don't know for sure, but the idea with this is to be able to follow all these dependencies and track the structure of code and how it interrelates, while sending a lot less information back and forth.
Right.
If the AI is interested in a particular method, it will get that method only, rather than get an entire 1,000-line file that method is in.
It's kind of cooperating with the AI. And I would use that an example there to say, well, if you're going to give an intern, which is the equivalent here, some work, it's more efficient to narrow down the scope of what you want the intern to do, rather than just give him 9 million lines of code and say create a new login page. It's far better to give him a scope of the work, or her, the scope of the work and some screenshots, and say I want it to look like this and here's some functionality, rather than just say here's 9 million lines of the base code, create me a login page. Because if you do that, it's going to take the intern much longer and cost you more money per hour if you're paying them hourly. And it's the same thing with AI. If you give them 9 million lines of code and say tell me what bits I can add to make it create a login page, you're going to blow through your budget in terms of tokens very quickly. It's not going to be very efficient maybe, but probably not going to be as efficient as giving a more narrow scope of things and a better explanation of, as I wrote down, it's on the bottom of my list of questions here, which is ask good questions. Because if you want good answers, ask good questions, and the AI will perform. So, Joe,
sorry, but the design is meant for that kind of thing. The tooling that we want to create for the AI to use is meant to understand Delphi and be able to assist. So it's not just the AI that's here. That's the goal. Anyway, as I said, it's a preview.
Yeah,
that's the goal.
And that actually goes to this question as well, which is from Joe Sansalone. Sansalone? Does that mean never alone? Okay. So does CodeBot have a fine-tuned model based on Delphi syntax, libraries, components, etc.? That would be even more powerful. I think they need to.
There are lots of things we're thinking about here. So, I mean, not currently, but it's definitely on the table. I think that one of there are multiple ways. AI definitely knows Delphi. There are multiple ways to sort of lead AI in the direction of specific things. That's actually another reason to use that same code analysis model, because we want to use that to make sure it is aware of your specific code and your specific libraries. Without fine tuning, but because we can make that information directly available. Now, whether we do that via a fine-tuned model in the end, or whether we use other tools like the one we're currently looking at, or whether we use a more sort of RAG-based system or something, there are all sorts of different paths. So even though the answer to what's on the screen is no, not currently, the answer to the reason for that question is definitely yes.
Yeah. So more going on. Yeah. I asked Jim McKeith whether he used to work for RemObjects, and he said yes, he did. So there you go. I thought he had, but he just chimed in and he's watching. So okay,
so
well,
good company, and they make great stuff.
Yeah, well, I
part of the Delphi ecosystem.
I don't work for them, but yes, it's good stuff. So those are the specific questions. The function selected, real life applications, multiple. Okay, so I think we'll probably let you answer these directly because some of them are quite long and not very real life applications of
Sure.
multiple tables having 200 plus fields and thousands of lines of code for business rules very quickly makes AI expensive. It's often cheaper to hire an Eastern European. I think he means to outsource it. Well, yeah. I mean, as David says, it's about doing it intelligently, and one of the things you're trying to do is actually, not burden the AI with stuff that could be done locally to narrow down the scope of what you actually need it to do, rather than just blindly, give it thousands and thousands of lines of code and let it work it out from there. Yes, of course. And as I said, the example I gave was if you want the intern to be more efficient, don't give him 9 million lines of code, or don't give her like 9 million lines of code and say work it out for yourself. You need to have the scope there. The function was selected in the AI, was asked to complete it, and we're getting towards time for the next session, but we're fine. And the AI was asked to complete it. The AI completed the code with multiple variations, but wrote the entire answer in the editor. Correct.
That was Smart Code Insight, actually. That wasn't the one we're previewing. That was meant to be shown by comparison. Yeah, I like our one actually displays in a pop-up just like normal code completion, except it shows the entire suggested method or block of code in a pop-up.
Yeah.
But the thing of various variations instead, and let the user choose the one they want. Look, yes and no, because ideally it will suggest something really good. And I think that with this kind of thing, the model of how you interact with an AI is not necessarily only just let it propose something and then you selective option, is that it will propose something and that you sort of interact with it as you write code together. But that said, what I demoed to you when it popped up and it showed a code completion pop-up where I pressed tab and then it inserted the method, actually does have support already for multiple versions. And if the AI had decided itself that there were multiple plausible versions, it actually already does this. If it had decided there were multiple plausible versions, then it actually would have shown that, and you could have pressed, I can't remember now, I think it was like Control Alt left or right arrow to choose. But in general, it just tries to do a good job from the beginning.
Ali has a question as well, and we both know Ali, and he has some insight into what goes on. Due to the security concerns, RAD Studio's AI integrations have limitations and don't provide access to the project's actual code or environment for AI. What about the CodeBot? I see what you're saying, Ali, and I know you know quite a lot about this. It's not that we don't allow access. What happens is we allow the people to manage the access, which is a slight different approach to some of the Microsoft tools, for example, which kind of they're on or they're not. Your Microsoft has a very, very large investment in AI technology, and what's the word I'm looking for? They're the things that drive them and not necessarily things that drive Embarcadero. We don't have, for example, a financial preference for which AI engine to use. Our preference is based on your preferences. So if you choose to use OpenAI, solutions, or Claude, or Gemini, or something like that, that's your choice, and that's really because we feel like we should give choices. How, David? To go back to CodeBot, in terms of security, you're not actually giving it all the code, are you? Is that right? You're actually you're asking.
No, absolutely not. I mean, it would. I mean, I think the first thing is if you don't want AI to interact with your code, don't use AI. It's very easy to prevent that if you don't want it to happen, which is just by not doing it. But I think really the thing is that I have heard, from a few people who, I think that the fear that AI might sort of use your code is in my view not perhaps understanding exactly how the system might work, because AI vendors provide a service, and there's very often contractual wording in there that they don't use the data. And I
Yeah.
think one of the best ways to consider this would be something like your Google Workspace. Like Google provides your email and spreadsheets and stuff for businesses as part of the Google Workspace. And that info can be incredibly sensitive, far more sensitive than source code. Internal finances and the CEO's emails and stuff can all go through this third-party system. And why do we trust it? Well, because we have
Because you have to.
a contract there that says, look, they're going to not do anything dodgy. And I think it's exactly the same with any product that interacts with any business thing. There are products out there that scan source code for vulnerabilities, for example. That looks at the entire code base. And I think really this is just about, do you use a tool that says, hey, we do the right thing or not? And if you use a tool that says, yep, we do the right thing, then you're good.
And also when it comes to regulation as well, a lot of the regulatory authorities now, their fines are based on a percentage of income. And the reason was, you can say, well, let's fine Google $1 million, and Google will go, it's cheaper for us to just pay the fine, than fight the case legally, because they've got teams of lawyers, I'm sure. But what isn't cheaper is if they say we fine you 10% of your turnover, which would be painful even for somebody the size of Google. So there's always legal frameworks helping you. You say, oh well, they're too big. I can't trust them because no, I disagree. I think it is what it is. We're kind of running over time, which is fine, but I just want to point out one comment which Dave and I talked about a lot before we started this, and someone saying, it was Paul actually saying, thanks to Embarcadero for allowing cross-pollination here. And David and I talked about this because it's important to understand why these things are okay, which is that you have to have faith in what the products that you provide are strong enough to have people that maybe produce their own IDEs, or Free Pascal or Lazarus or anything that RemObjects might produce as well. It's all for the benefit of the developers at the end of the day. And if RemObjects comes up with something that is earth-shatteringly good and is painful for us to go, God, they're good, they did this, or they got everything in rainbow colors, and everybody loves that, and we can't do that. Well, then it's beholden to us to actually have that kind of driving force behind us to actually do something about it and compete. We are not in competition. We're not adversaries. We're all trying to contribute towards the health of Object Pascal and Delphi as a specific variant for us, and actually for David as well. But I'm going to talk at a Free Pascal event later this year as well, because we all want people to use Object Pascal preferably over any other language. If you go and use C# or God forbid Python or something like that, then that's a sad state of affairs, because if we're all using Object Pascal, then everybody wins at the end of the day. And so thank you for saying that we're allowing cross-pollination, but that was never really a question here. It's about what's good for the developers, and I genuinely mean that I think David's got something really good here with CodeBot. I've told him as much. I think that it offers something very, very interesting, and it's got my support. And this will not be the last time that he and I will talk about this. And come up with.
I appreciate that. Thanks. And look, I mean, and even if you might ignore Oxygen, the Object Pascal compiler that RemObjects makes, which I happen to really like myself. But their other libraries are part of the Delphi ecosystem. Like if you want to use Hydra, it's built for Delphi interop. That's his point.
Yeah,
and so it's a great company. It's an ecosystem.
Yeah, correct.
It's good to respect the way for everyone to get along.
Yeah. Anyway, so we'll run over a bit, but I'm sure Eric won't mind. It's fine.
Ah, golly, we are 9 minutes over late. So I'm sorry, I'm actually not
Don't
certain
worry
who's
about
after
it.
me, but whoever it is, I apologize.
It's
So,
I think it's Eric next. It's fine. He'll be good. But it's important. I think CodeBot is a really exciting development. I can't wait until you've actually got to the point where, you go, actually, we think this is good enough as a first cut to install and play with, because I think it's needed. I think that certainly Atanas, who's the GM at the moment of Embarcadero and president of Idea, he really genuinely believes in AI. He's got a big article up on the blog about it at the moment. Anybody that's skeptical about AI, you need to understand that it doesn't matter whether you dislike it or like it. It's not going anywhere. It's here for good, and good or bad, whatever your point of view. I personally think it's a good thing. I'm an optimistic skeptic. I don't want to trust everything implicitly. I want to see what can be done, but I am very optimistic about a very exciting future, and CodeBot is part of that as well. And all power to it. It's great.
well, yeah, as I said, part of the ecosystem. And if we're doing something that happens to align with your idea as own president, I'm very happy with that.
Yeah, I will
Yeah,
be
sort
very
of
pleased about
help
it.
Delphi developers. That's what it's all about.
Exactly. All right. Well, thanks a lot, David, and thanks for coming on. And we will see you next time. See you
All
soon.
right. Well, thanks very much.
All right. Bye bye.